Good morning, gentlemen. And how are you? My deepest apologies for being so late. We should have told Brian Fenton, Dublin footballer, not to retire on International Men's Day. And when I was booked to come down here to do MC at the Men's Sheds conference. So apologies to one and all. And I will also be leaving you again. Sorry, Seamus. Just for a couple of minutes because I have to do an interview on the radio. So again, my apologies. I'm so delighted to be involved, to be asked to be here. I am well aware of the Sheds movement. I know it started in Australia, but has grown and developed, that we have the biggest number of men's sheds in the world, which is truly remarkable. And I thank you all for coming from different parts of Ireland to be here. It's about my second time in Mucklagh Community Centre. When I was here before, I was interviewing Offaly hurlers, and maybe in time I might be doing it again. So anybody here from Offaly? Nobody here? Yes. The faithful county. Without further ado, I want to introduce a friend of mine. The last time we met was at the ploughing at the IFA Centre, and there was a competition about who would pick up the fastest number of spuds, and it was the greatest crack ever. Now you know that Seamus is a big, fine full forward, while I'm a very small corner back. So I thought the only way I could beat him was to give him a good hard shoulder when he wasn't expecting it. And I have the pleasure of announcing in public that Seamus O'Rourke went sprawling on his backside on the ground, which I thought I'd never be able to say in public, but I loved it. I'm still boasting about it. Today, Seamus O'Rourke is, of course, a wonderful actor, a poet, writer, and as I said, he is a great friend. He's been on the radio many times with me, and I love listening to his stories. You know he's a poet because he's lyrical in his beautiful voice and lyrical in the words he says. I know you're going to enjoy him. And as I say, I'll be back in a couple of minutes, Seamus, to hear the rest of your speech. But I know you're going to give a big welcome to the one and only Seamus O'Rourke.
Thanks, Marty. We will not mention the potato picking again today. I know there's going to be lots of talk today about the men's shed and people who are much more qualified than me to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about, I'm going to give you a few things that I've written over the years, mostly about men. But I thought I might as well let you in on a secret. I was asked about 2 years ago to become the age-friendly ambassador for Leitrim. And I thought I was too young. And I made the following speech, and I was never asked back. This is the speech. To the elderly, downtrodden men and women of Ireland, to the best befores and happy ever afters, the last of the leftovers, we are gathered here today to give thanks, to round up what's left of our thoughts and our bodies as we head off on the slow, slow train to somewhere that is not that far down the track. I am the ambassador of age, the custodian of confusion. Call me the inhaler fairy. If you are 55 or over, or if you think you are still 17 yet grunt at the slightest movement from anywhere below your chin, or if you are currently in dispute with that mirror, mirror on the wall, please follow the exit signs and meet me in the foyer of the Downhill Hotel. The Downhill is where it's at. Wake up and smell the Vicks. Welcome to the last resort. Welcome to you, the cohort that spills out onto the streets after bingo and 11 o'clock mass, causing social disorder and mayhem. High on silver mints and fisherman's friends. Don't look back. You can look forward to free travel, soup and three-cornered sandwiches at every turn. Freewheeling off to free knee surgery if you are free in 2046. Take your time, because time is in rather short supply. Our motto, live a little, because a little is all we've got. If you drive, drive slow, not for any safety reasons, just to annoy the shit out of other road users. Never reverse, never pull in, but don't forget to wave. And for those who can't see, don't panic. Most modern cars have built-in sensors. Use them. If you hear a beeping sound, turn the steering wheel slightly in any direction. If the beeping sound increases, try the other way. And remember that although old people cause most road accidents, they are seldom in them. Wear clean underwear. Take your tablets. If you have avoided drug addiction in the past, ask yourself why. Maybe some stronger narcotics with a spoon of jam might work better than the Horlicks and gripe water. Remember that feeling when you first took a taste of Evo Stick. Put some pizzazz back in your life. And if you end up in handcuffs, you've either been arrested or it's your weekly class of bondage for beginners. Try new relationships. With your life expectancy, you can guarantee your partner that they won't get bored. Go on holiday, but don't go far. Embrace the future, but try not to blink. Have one last hurrah, go on the tear, hold up a post office, not at gunpoint, but by endlessly searching through your pockets, removing all slightly used tissues and half-eaten sweets. Take your time, but remember, time is not your friend. So make this Christmas one to remember. As soon you won't remember anything. Give crap presents this Christmas, because that's what you're going to get in return. And always remember, live a little, because a little is all we've got. Thank you. So anyway, I'm going to do a few pieces that I've written over the years, and they're all 2 or 3 minutes long. And I just want to remind you, there was a vet up in Carrigallen, where I come from, in County Leitrim, and he was a great singer. But he used to sing a lot of opera songs in the pub, and people didn't know when he was finished. So he used to say, "Clap, you bastards." So when you hear that, you'll know when to clap. This story is about my first dance, and women got it very easy at the dances. They just sat there and looked pretty, and we had to do all the work. And this is the story of my first dance. Doesn't need any more introduction than that. They weren't all they were cracked up to be, the old days, especially at the tail end of the dance hall scene back in the early 80s. Not for those of us who had just left Legoland and walked straight on to the junior team. Not easy when you're 16, the pioneer pin at half-mast, the officer in charge at Horny Grand Central with his ear cocked full-time, standing to attention, all hands to the pump on weeknights. But this was the weekend. Time to dream a little and wash ourselves. Time to dust off the hay and turf, pull the ticks, or at least give them a good fix of brute, have them smelling right for those weekend nights in Ballinamore or the Mayflower in Drumshambo, the Beecher's Brook of the dance hall scene. Some dance halls had romantic themes back then, like the Rainbow and the Granada or the Wonderland in Bawn, or just plain Ballinyath that had no romance at all. But this was the weekend of my first dance, and the Wonderland and its reservoirs was where I'd get my chance. I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting so little. A giant waiting room is all it was, waiting for the love doctor to hand us our prescription, and a small crowd. That observation would come in handy later. And the band was nothing to write home about either. They played the Hucklebuck a few times, and then a few more times later, and said, "Thank you for dancing," even when no one did. There was only a handful of girls there at the start, and their lifts, these older bachelor neighbours who provided transport, and although they had bad hips, they liked driving young ones to dances. The scent that lingered in their cars helped numb the loneliness of their country lives. No magic tree was needed in a cortina full of youthful ladies laughing, and a ticket in and a supper served. Romance by association. And the presentation of these girls was mainly down to the caretaker of the hall, who had placed all the old church pews along the longest wall in case anyone wanted to sit. And this is where they sat, perched on the backs of pews, waiting on the queues of men to choose one of them to dance. Joe Clamping would choose them all if he got half a chance, because Joe was 60 and he loved to dance and sell raffle tickets for a singing fish. And he had this young one out on the floor who wasn't quite ready for his level of enthusiasm. Joe's up and let me at him style was being rebuked. I must remember that, I thought. Enthusiasm is wasted on the youth. At least the band thanked Joe for dancing. It was time for me to make my move. Maybe it's because it was my first time there, but I could feel everyone stare when she wouldn't dance. And maybe I didn't ask her right. I had said, would you like to dance? Okay, I said it under my breath, but she must have known I wasn't asking for a loaf of bread. I rephrased the question and said it louder. I said, are you dancing? Her friend said, no, she's not, but I am. And she grabbed me by the hand. It was like asking for a loaf of bread and getting a pot of jam. She said, my name's Pamela. I haven't seen you before, but I couldn't answer because we were now out on the floor and I was no dancer. I said, there's a small crowd. She said, there is. I didn't know what to say after that. She said, they'll all come in when the pubs are closed. And I said, I suppose, but I don't suppose I knew what I supposed. I was 16 years old and I couldn't concentrate with the battle of the bulge that was going on elsewhere. Luckily, Joe Clamping had found himself a new partner. He was pushing her out onto the floor as if her battery was flat and he was trying to start her. And the band said, let's change the tempo and slow it down. And I found myself looking around for some divine inspiration. And the conversation bubble just fell like lead, and Pamela moved closer and I went red. And before she hit the rock of Cashel, I said, would you like to buy a ticket for Joe Clamping's raffle? She said, is that what you have in your pocket? More blood ran to me head and to the raffle tickets. I said, it's very warm. She said, it is. And she said, you're very red. I said, I think I might be coming down with a fever. She said, you should have stayed in bed. Joe Clamping smiled because he had his one started. Clap, you bastards. I know there are quite a few men's sheds in the cities and the bigger towns, but when I think of them, I think of rural areas. And I presume that quite a lot of men in the rural sheds are from rural areas. I come from the most rural area you could find. And I grew up on a small farm, and I hated farming. So I wrote this piece about me and my brother. It's called Farming. I hated spreading top dressing, manure, dung when I was young. Farming's not for everyone. No, I could cock hay all day, shank butts and rake and ted and turn. I loved to burn bushes too, and whins and fodder. Foddering was okay. Run off out through the fields with a back load of hay. Race the brother up Killern Hill, 2 bales apiece. Sink into your hoss in daub and blue clay. The tramped ground weeping, the silver kings seeping, Killern's mud all mush and sorrow. Ploughing through gaps and collapsed drains, the outlying farm that never quite got reclaimed, the good intentions shamed by cow tracks and whins and briars and scrub and rushes and bushes, only good to burn. That was our song, me and the brother. He was older and hardier, but I was thick, a big thick head that you couldn't bait with a big stick. It's hard to bait being thick, so Mammy said, and she'd know. She had 4 of us. And for the record, I hated farming, especially spreading dung, no fun. But in the spring of every year, that was our author, me and the brother in the top field with a bottle of tea, no water, just tea in a bottle and heaps and heaps and heaps of dung, all delivered by the 135 and the link box and a homemade pull-up tailboard, a contraption before its time. The old fella, the inventor of labour-saving devices, except when it came to spreading dung. No, that was done by hand because we had wet land, and spreading dung with the grape helps teenage boys grow. You can't reap if you don't sow, and although we never sowed, we kept spreading the manure. The Leitrim man's version of Mass. Not sure if it's doing any good, but keep doing it all the same. In this field we pray and prance about with slightly soiled farmyard compost, exercise, our bread of life, feed the land back to itself, like eating your own arm. And as the bottle of tea cools in the small field with the two fools in the setting sun, the brothers meet, the work complete, the mounds of dung all now beneath our feet. This as close as ever we'll be, me and my brother in the top field, with blistered hands and charred knees. You can have the land, my friend, and I look elsewhere for the rainbow's end. Not easy to be found, but there has to be easier ways of falling down. You take the thorny crown, and I'll take my leave and I'll begin my search. You look after the rood and perch, the small holding, the home place, the land of our father's birth. You're the better man, to be fair. And I left my brother standing there, farming. The other thing we were, as well as being rural, we all went to Mass, except the Protestants. And after Mass used to be the place where everybody would join and have a chat. And I wrote this story, and it's called The Men. Thanks be to God. And that was it. Mass was over. The 40 minutes of saying nothing apart from our prayers was up. And the first up were the Carrigallons, up and away out the door before the choir mistress could say like a bat out of hell. The Carrigallan ones who had driven all of 3 miles to join our primitive proceedings. The Carrigallan ones who had always presumed that the outback of Dromeela to have less oxygen, less civilization, and less shopping options once Mass had finished. They had strategically parked their cars for a quick getaway, and getaway they did, and not much loss. What loss was it if the Carrigallan ones were gone when we came out from Mass, townies with rosary beads and no manners, only coming out to our 10 o'clock Mass because Mass in Carrigallan was too early or second Mass was too drawn out. The townies could never understand our ways, all blasé about community and sense of place. But this was our place, our once-a-week social gathering. This was our glue. Not about prayers or religion or gospels, although we said our prayers and we had our religion. But as for the gospels, well, they were just stories. And not a patch on the stories that Benny Riley could tell, or Owl McCartan, or Edward Kiernan, or Mickey O'Brien. And when we were small boys, we stood with the men after Mass, clung to our daddy's coats, and listened to every word and learnt the art of storytelling. The amphitheatre of those Dromeela drumlins echoed every Sunday morning with guffaws of laughter and bewilderment as the stories and good ones began to flow. Eventually, we young fellas would let go of Daddy's coat and form our own clusters, our own brand of the Dromeela raconteur. Like rival gangs, we gathered at the back door of the chapel or at the gates or at the Drum Brick Road. This was the men after Mass of a Sunday in Dromeela back in the early 80s, county men and county councillors, the IFAs and the MEPs, the campaigners and the conspirators, the Mucklagh crowd and the football crowd, the pioneers and the pasty-faced brothers not long home from the disco. And where were the women when all this was going on? Putting up with it. What else? The men had the keys of the car, but the car was open, and if the women wanted to sit in and wait, they could. But never tell a man to hurry and him in the middle of a good story. And so they talked and lies got told and yarns were spun, stories elongated when the weather was fair or briskly tied up with the threat of rain. A tapestry of rural Ireland at the time, ignorant and blissful in equal measure. And then as the years edged on and the aftermath crowd one by one disappeared, but years later, across the wall in the graveyard, the newfangled force scheme cleared pathways and mowed, so that we could once again hold our weekly conversations with the men who had laughed and roared and guffawed and taught us an unlikely trade and somehow shaped our alternate lives. The men. The other place my father used to go for a bit of mail company was the shop. Our local shop was a place called Currawallion. It was the post office and the shop. And my mother never went shopping. She was a kind of odd. So that lad would go off and do the shopping. And he'd meet up with all his friends. I wrote this about the shop. The shop. It's closed now. And the post office end, the green post office sign taken down and lying somewhere damp, no more stamps. The big shop window reduced and the door built up. The ratcheting welcoming, "Mammy, there's someone in the shop," bell is gone, silent. It just looks like a house now at a crossroads. Not a meeting place or a landmark, no longer Highland Shop or McKiernan's Country Store. It's not called Dramila P.O., not anymore. Those names have lost their meaning. They used to mean the shop. No one died, no one was brought out and shot at dawn, and those who live on adjust. But no more bread and jam, no demand, no half-pound of ham and a Cully's batch, the brack for after dinner and the HB ice cream block, oh aye, and wafers too, loose tea and 4 tomatoes, corned beef for a change this evening, they're getting too fond of ham. 100-watt bulb and a tin of black polish, did the fishman come today, and you kept the observer on the celt, thanks. Always good to know what's happening at the perimeter of our world. And a tin of Andrew's liver salts and a small bottle of PLJ. She's on a diet these days, or so she says, took into walking for no reason. Would you have 2-inch nails, just a lock in me hand, the fence is down in Killearn, and she wants washing powder, but she doesn't want Daz. I'll bring custard and tapioca too, the blessing of the graves on Sunday, and I don't know which one she'll use, and 6 pounds of sugar she's making jam with a sight of plums the year. And John Francis died, God love him, Holy Mary, Mother of God, and give me a sliced pan, there'll have to be sandwiches on Sunday when there's a crowd about, and 2 tins of spam, and a jar of sandwich spread and salad cream, and I'll bring another batch before it's gone, and now the shop is gone. The weighing scales are gone, the parcel string no longer long. It's a sitting room now, I suppose, a shop, a post office in repose. But no more apple tarts inside the door or bananas, exotic fruit never sold. The mop heads and the wooden handles, the bale and twine, the potatoes, the roundup, the rent-a-kill, the foot-long chewing gum, all gone. And the conversation is gone too. The good spakes and the dry ones, the Christians of all creeds, the laughter, the transfer of goodwill and ill, a Facebook place where real people scroll through their daily lives, and those in the aprons and the shop coats poked and liked and shared. And we watched their children grow and smile and embroil with the men talking of politics and the weather and the white short-horn bull, and the sweets are gone. The penny bars, the chalk ices, the Mars, the curly-whirly world, the wibbly-wobbly wonder of a time when tar melted and warmer, longer days stood idle for a while and embroidered our simple lives and tied us to our post. And what we miss most is our post office, our shop, our trading place, lost along with those warmer days and our mislaid, forgotten friends. And the bell no longer sends for that friendly face. The apron and the shop coat hung, no aftermath throng, no evening calm, no night vigil with a can of Coke and a silk cut blue. No more Celt days or Observer days, no Christmas box or poor box or phone box or Currawallen 131. no nightlight for the passer-by. It's just a house now at a crossroads. And yes, of course, we can shop elsewhere with our club cards and our loyalty points. And yes, of course, we can get cheaper food and us as fat as fools. But no news from the shop today. It's closed. Thanks. I'm going to finish off now with probably the closest thing to a poem about the men's shed that I ever wrote. It's called The Drawer, which is under the bench in the shed. The drawer. He was an easygoing man, that's what they said. Easygoing, and he was. My father had a drawer under the bench in the shed. That was his go-to place, the somewhere he went for peace and clarity, or just time. The drawer had divisions made from scalps of wood, divided to hold washers and nuts and split pins and plugs, rawl plugs for masonry. It was a farmer's emporium of knickknacks and tools. Everything was there, anything you'd use to fix stuff around the house. But it wasn't always what was in the drawer that the old man saw. It was the world around him when it got disturbed. It was his place for reflection and welding and grinding, for sorting out questions and sometimes, not always, finding answers. If we wouldn't do homework or crash the good car, if there was a row over football, or if someone let him down somehow, he'd go to the shed and he'd open the drawer and he'd start footering and figuring and scratching and banging. And after surmising, he'd put all away and he'd take a deep breath and he'd have the last say. Of course he did. He was the boss. He kept everything there, all the rivets and screws and a packet of lockets that never got used and fuses. He had a compartment for fuses all to themselves. He said they were safer there than above on the shelves, and they were. There was the good spanner. It was missing, though he still had the box, and he kept bulbs in it. And there was a whole section for locks and another for keys. He had keys for locks that were lost or broken, and good locks with no keys that no one could open. If he had a row with me mother, that's where he'd go, although it wasn't often they had a row. If there was an animal down or a friend of his died, you'd see him through the window, just standing inside by the bench at the drawer. And as time went on, he went there a lot and he'd open the drawer, sometimes not. The divisions and compartments had started to crumble. Everything was there. It was just such a scramble to find what he wanted. But he still fixed things, or he thought he did. And sometimes he fixed things that were already fixed. Mostly, he put on his glasses, marked glasses, from the pouch on the shelf, and he tidied the bench and he tied bits of twine. And he'd open the drawer and say, "Oh my, all these things so precious," and he didn't know why. He was an easygoing man, that's what they said. He kept his world in a drawer, under the bench, in the shed. Thanks. Thanks a million. Thank you.